Welcome to Canada's podcast.
Hello, I'm Mario Toneguzzi, managing editor of Canada's Podcast Network. Joining me today on Calgary's podcast is David Wallach, who is president and broker of Barclay Street Real Estate in Calgary, as well as president and founder of Triumph Real Estate Investment Trust. Thanks, David, for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Well, let me just start by asking you just a little bit about the two different entities that you're involved with. Let's start with Barclay. Tell me a little bit about Barclay, its history, and what you guys do.
Well, Barclay has a long history. It started 50 years ago. We're celebrating this year our golden anniversary, 50 years. It was founded in 1973 as True Road Real Estate at the time. And then in 2004, we rebranded under the name Barclay Street Real Estate. I don't know if many people in Calgary know, but 3rd Street is Barclay Street, and we are on 3rd Street. So our office is here for the last 20-some years, and that's why it's Barclay Street. So we do commercial real estate and property management. We deal with all market segments, whether it's retail, office, industrial, leasing and sales, land sales, investment sales, and of course, property management, as I mentioned. We are now 47 people working here as when we call ourselves the Barclay Street family.
Oh.
So that's one. A few years ago, I launched Triumph Real Estate Investment Trust, which is a private REIT. And we buy properties both sides of the border. We bought in Phoenix, Denver in the US. We bought in Ottawa, Calgary, Edmonton, and Red Deer on our side of the border. And we raise money all across Canada from private people. As I mentioned, people can use it's a trust, so people can use it either for RSP, TFSA, Lira, or they can invest in cash. We also take cash. We're good people. We take cash as well, and we kind of enjoy, buying and selling properties. We buy a mix of retail, the neighborhood plazas. We buy suburban office, and we buy industrial multi-bay.
Mm-hmm. What's your sense, David, right now of the commercial real estate market? First of all, locally here in Calgary, and then more on a broader scale, whether it's Canada and US.
Well, it's a tale of two stories right now, and it's very interesting. And I've been doing this 23 years. Valentine's Day is the day I started in 2000, so it will be 23 years. As I said, it's a tale of two stories: leasing and sales. Sales is now kind of in a standstill as a result of the fastest increase in interest rate that Canada has ever experienced. It's not the highest, because the 80s was the highest, but it was the fastest in a short period of time, less than 10 months. It went from 0 to 5 to now 4.5%. So that created kind of a standstill, because it created a gap between a buyer and the seller. Usually, if we look at the history of all the previous cycles we had, it takes about 4 to 6 months for the market to digest what the new reality is and start working again. Yeah. Because there's always a seller, always a buyer. You just have to make the adjustments, and those adjustments usually take 4 to 6 months. So that's on the sales side. It's kind of a standstill. If you can finance with the new interest rate, you hold. If you can't finance, you probably have to do some kind of a fire sale. On the leasing side, on the other hand, we see a lot of activity, and it's in all market segment. And I can tell you, it's also both sides of the border, because as I mentioned, we have properties on the Triumph side. We have properties both sides of the border. Barclay is just Alberta. And the leasing activity has really picked up. And I talk about industrial, I talk about retail, and I talk about suburban office and office in general, even downtown Calgary, which suffers from a big vacancy. But what we see is majority of the leases are small and mid-sized businesses. It's the local guys. Mostly it's the local guys that are creating the activity right now.
Mm-hmm. What do you think, what are investors in real estate looking for these days?
Oh, I think, well, you have to, you know, probably realize that there are a few different types of investors. There are investors like us, Triumph Real Estate Investment Fund, that we buy revenue producing properties. We don't develop. We buy opportunities, meaning there's some vacancy, bad management, below market rents, and we create value. Then there's other investors. They go from brownfield, and they are the developers, and so two different kind of investment that we see. I think that I can only talk from the perspective of Triumph because I don't do development. And from the perspective of Triumph, people are looking for the best return they can get on their investment, meaning is there a quarterly or monthly distribution? What's the exit strategy? And so basically it's the yield, it's what the return on my investor is. And that's when we have about 1,200 investors all across Canada. So that's what we see from them. It's just, what do I get back? On the development side, it's a longer process. So you don't see a return until the building is complete or until you sell it. So it's a different kind of investment and a different kind of investors. Usually it's people or companies with deeper pockets.
Tell me a little bit about real estate and in terms of your interest in it. How did you get involved initially with real estate and why?
Before I was in real estate, I had my insurance brokerage. That's before I immigrated to Canada. When I immigrated to Canada in the end of 98, it was December 28, 1998 that we moved here. It was plus 25 in Tel Aviv when we left and minus 18 when we landed in Calgary.
Welcome to
And typical government bureaucracy, they lost my medical exam. So when you immigrate, you have to do medicals. And I had to do a new medical. And I was already here because during the interview at the embassy, they say, "Oh, you can go. You'll get your papers, and we approve your family." So I was here. Couldn't work, couldn't get a job because I didn't get my landed immigrant. So I had like 10 or 11 months before I got it, before I found it, approved me again. But I was just driving around Calgary, and I remember talking with my wife and saying, "You know what, honey, this place is going through a boom and real estate is really doing well." And that was 1999 and 2000, and stuff was still cheap then, but you can tell that there's a lot of activity on the real estate side, and there's a lot of migration and immigration, mostly at that time migration. And I said, you know what, I'm going to try to get into real estate, and that was the story. And I love it. It's my passion now.
Oh, so tell me why do you decided to move here?
I have to tell you a story about this question. I was in Las Vegas in a real estate conference a few years ago, and I made a presentation about Calgary's real estate and the whole 9 yards. And the first question people, and I say, Q&A, as first question is, why did you move to Calgary?
Yeah.
So I wasn't prepared. My presentation, I wasn't prepared for that question. So my first reaction was, my wife and I decided to watch CNN rather to be on CNN. And if you look at what happened in the last few days in Israel, they're on CNN all the time and Fox. And we weren't persecuted. We did the move on very good terms. We did the whole process of interview and medical, and I came here before for 10 days to check whether this is the city we want to live in. So we did the process by the book, and it was to have a better, easier, better life. Not the pressure you have over there. Different pressures here, economy, and stuff like that. So we really made a good decision. We love it here. I'm passionate about this city and about the future of the city.
Let me ask you a little bit about that. Your sense of where Calgary and Alberta as a province are at right now on the economic side of things.
Well, I think that in today's market, in today's economy, with all the changes we had in the last 3 years, forget for a second the oil crash in 2014, at the end of 2014, that Calgary and Edmonton, mostly Calgary, suffered for 5 years. But let's focus on COVID and pre-COVID and post-COVID, and with inflation and interest rate. Alberta is where you want to be. Calgary is where you want to be. And I am a big fan of this and supporter and champion and ambassador of this city and this province. I was just on Friday at a roundtable with the mayor. I have a radio talk show that with Tara McCool that is all about the positive stuff we see here in Calgary. And it's amazing to see how many companies we have here that are not oil and gas related, and how diversifying we're getting to be, and that is what gives me the understanding and knowledge and feel that Calgary is a great place to be. And I think also, the proof is in the pudding. You see that in the last 2 years, we have, again, positive migration. People come here. We're getting to a shortage in rental, 2.6% vacancy in rental. And so it's great. We have big projects coming. We have the Green Line. I don't know if you noticed, one of the comments from the premier was that she wants to connect the Green Line to the airport, which will change it completely, because then we'll have a line going to downtown. You have the BMO Center. They now announced a hotel over there. And I think, and I kind of know, but I can't say anything, that more announcements are coming down the road.
Yeah, exactly.
If you know what I mean.
Well, that's good to know. And it's a good place to be. Let's talk a little bit about you personally, David. Now, and some of your passions, I guess. But you mentioned the radio talk show. Tell me a little bit more about that. It's on QR.
Yes.
770 here in Calgary, and 107, I guess, on FM.
FM. Yeah.
So tell me just a little bit about how that came about and why you wanted to do that.
So it has to do a lot with COVID and with vacancies. And I was chairing the Calgary Economic Development Real Estate Committee for 4 years. Okay. 2 years with Scott Atchison, 2 years with Ian McCorkindale. Two bright guys. And during COVID, when we moved to the Zoom meetings, the atmosphere was so down, right? Everybody was so down. Everybody was the world is coming to an end. And so my Mediterranean blood kind of boiled one day. And I said, you know what? I'm out of here. And I connected a friend of mine that works for 770. And I said, at that time it was only 770. Now it's 107 FM as well. And I said, Kim, I have an idea. I want to do a radio talk show that is only positive on Calgary's future. No bad news, no bad interviews, no discussion about oil price or COVID, or just where the future is leading us and how great the city is.
Yeah.
So then we went, and then I approached Tara McCool, which when I immigrated here, I had no clue what Tara McCool is. I didn't know she's a big celebrity in town. I know her because she's my spin instructor. So every Saturday she kicks my butt on spin. And so I asked her and I knew she was in the business world. That's how I knew her, with Meg Energy. And then she had her own coaching company. So I approached her and I said, Tara, will you do this with me? This is all about positive news. And she said, yeah, of course. And then I figured out that she's very famous here in the media world.
Yeah.
So we went to the regional manager of the radio, John Voss, and we presented our plan, and he goes, yeah, I'll give you a pilot. And we had a pilot for 13 episodes, and we're now almost 2 years every Saturday at 9:30 a.m. and on 107 FM and 770 AM. And then every Monday, all our recordings, all our episodes are becoming a podcast on iTunes, on Spotify, and on every other kind of platform of podcast. And it's amazing to see that in almost 2 years, I think we had one or maybe two oil and gas people. All the rest are completely different industries. And it's amazing to see how much talent we have in the city, how much potential growth we have in the city. And that's why I'm a big champion and ambassador of Calgary.
And the thing is, you bring up an interesting point, right? And obviously, kudos to QR and those folks over there at Chorus for doing something like this, because obviously, the perception is out there that the media, like me, right? All we focus on is on the negative stuff out there, right? So kudos to them to bring forward a quote unquote good news idea. Do how important do you think that is? When we talk about the economy, there's consumer confidence is one of the big things that people talk about, whether it's buying a house or buying a set of sneakers, right? Can we take that into a bigger scale? Is that also important? That positive vibe for the general state of things in an economy.
The phrase karma is, I won't say the word. Karma can be positive as well. It's all how what you create. And again, when we came to John Voss at the radio, and we said, it's only going to be positive. He was our biggest champion, and I take my hat off for him, because as you said, when I was in my previous life, I was a GM of a professional basketball. And I remember one of the media, outlets at the time, we had a discussion, and they say, well, good news doesn't sell. That's what they told me, right? Good news doesn't sell. You know what? Good news does sell. I'm shocked for the response we get. Sometimes people recognize me and say, oh, we heard listening to your show. It was a great show. And we know now for a fact that some of the people that were on our show are doing business with other people that were on our other show of ours, because they heard each other and connected. So it's a very important thing to send a positive message, if you have a positive message, and if it's not just I'm not painting the world in pink just from my imagination. It's all fact based. The one thing that, as I mentioned, I was on Friday with the mayor at the round table, and the one thing I did criticize them is, if you go to Ontario, you listen to a lot of advertisement about come to Calgary, come to Alberta, come to live here. We don't do enough internally. We don't send the message enough to our own people here in Calgary. And that's our show, and that's what we want to do. Because people don't realize how many good things, new things, interesting things, things that can change the dynamic of the city from an oil and gas only to a multiple aspects of economy. Yeah. So this is, for example, this week I'm meeting Tim Riley, the president of MRU, because I want to have a connection between Barclay Street and MRU to be part of helping them with their business. There's a lot of things we can do here, but we also have to send a message. And that was my criticism to the mayor about CED. And I'm going to meet Brad the president of CED, and give him a criticism to his face that we need to do more promotion internally, how good it is here. And it's great here. Yeah. Stuff is expensive, a whole 9 yards. I know I'm part of it. It's a tough year. I'm trying to push my people here to work harder and, but at the end of the day, this is the place to be.
All right. Now, speaking of places to be, I often see a lot of your social media posts that you're out and about a lot, around the world. But one of your passions is in the area of fitness. Tell me a little bit about that and what you do there.
My passion is eating. So to do that, I have to do the training. My new passions are boxing. I box 3 times a week.
Yeah,
and I do also bike riding. Bike riding I do as part of charity. and we're going to announce, Barclay Street is going to announce what our contribution to charity in 2023 is going to be. I'll give you a hint. I'm a veteran, so that's a very close and dear to my heart.
Yeah.
I go because I'm a veteran of the Israeli Defense Forces. I go every year to Israel for 5 days for a bike ride with Israeli wounded soldiers. So that's what the bike riding is. I prefer boxing over bike riding. 5 days on a bike, it's the most inspiring experience I had in my life, because I ride with the severely wounded. There are a few levels. I ride with the severely wounded, and the reason it's inspiring, we all complain about interest rate, inflation.
Yeah.
You go there and you ride with people that had head injuries, that can barely speak, no limbs, and they're in heaven. Yeah. They enjoy every minute of it. And I'm on the bike, and my back and my lower back, I won't say the word, is on fire, but I can't say anything, right? I can't say anything because they're happy. They're having the time of their life. And I look at them and I say, I don't have challenges in life. I have issues to deal with, but this is a challenge. I don't know how I will be if I was in their shoes.
Yeah,
and I now do it every year, and I'm committed to continue doing it as long as I can. I'm getting old, so I'm riding slower, but I'm still committed to do it. And as I mentioned, that's how I met Tara when I started training. She is my spin instructor, and yeah, she kicks the butt, my butt.
And where did the boxing come from?
Boxing is so during COVID, one of our tenants, Triumph Real Estate, owns a building in Northeast Calgary, and one of our tenants is a boxing gym.
Oh, okay.
And I started, and I did a few videos during COVID how we help the tenants, because we really helped our tenants to survive. I'll just share with you that from 120 tenants during COVID, we lost 6 because we helped all of them to survive. So I started talking with the owner and started going there and doing videos with him and how we treat him and how we're helping him. And he one day said, why did you come and box? And it's now 2 years later, and I'm still boxing. I love it. It's a great schwitz. You just go there and you sweat like crazy. And then, if you remember my passion, I can go and eat whatever I want.
There you go. Right. Well, you know what? The funny thing is, as you well know, I had a long career at the Calgary Herald, and Calgary Herald, we used to have a fitness center in the basement, and with a big punching bag, right? Big heavy bag. And I remember, every time I'd go down there to work out during the day, there was one of the executives, big, tall guy, pretty, it was pretty, not husky, but well-built guy. But he would go in there and he would pound the bag for a few minutes, right? Just pound it and then go back to work. And I thought that must be a great stress release.
It's awesome. I go at 5:30 after work, a couple of days.
Yeah.
And I can tell you, when I punch that bag and I work, I have a personal trainer there. So he's a boxing trainer as well. So I also learned some tactics and strategic kind of hitting. And but I can tell you, I don't think about anything, just how to stay alive and breathe. That's the only thing I think about. And it's great. Like every time I go, I sleep well that night.
There you go. Well, thanks very much, David, for joining us today.
My pleasure, and thank you for having me again.
All right. I'm Mario Toneguzzi, managing editor of Canada's Podcast Network. Joining me today was David Wallach, who is president and broker of Barclay Street Real Estate and president and founder of Triumph Real Estate Investment Trust. Thanks for joining us today on Calgary's Podcast.